SEALs whispered, "We're pinned down." Then she walked out of the storm. With sniper rifle, snow fell like shards of glass, slicing through the silence of the Siberian night. The SEALs' voices trembled over the radio. "We're pinned down." Then, through the whiteout storm, a lone figure appeared. A woman in frost-covered gear, sniper rifle slung across her back. And in that instant, hell froze. Her name was Lena Brooks. But for years, no one said it out loud. To her unit, she was Echo 7, a shadow that moved between worlds. She didn't crave medals or speeches. She craved silence, because silence to her wasn't empty. It was the sound of control, of staying alive. Lena grew up in the bitter cold of Montana, where winters taught you that stillness could save your life. Her father was a park ranger who never spoke much, but taught her everything about patience, how the wind tells secrets if you listen long enough. When he died in a blizzard saving 2 hikers, something in her froze too. She enlisted at 21. Small frame, steady eyes, and a heart wired for precision. Most doubted she'd last a week in sniper school, until she outshot every man in her class. "She doesn't blink," one instructor whispered. "She calculates." But beneath that calm, Lena carried a quiet wound. She had spent her life saving others from storms, yet never found shelter herself. Now, years later, she lay hidden beneath a frozen ridge on the Mongolian border, breath steady, watching a SEAL team move through a valley below. Her scope traced their every step. The snow muffled everything, except the faint echo of danger she'd learned never to ignore. Something wasn't right, and for people like Lena, not right usually meant someone was about to die. Through her scope, Lena watched the SEAL team halt in the shallow valley. 4 silhouettes against a landscape that looked dead but wasn't. Their formation was tight, their movements disciplined. Professionals, but even professionals could die if the snow started whispering secrets. Then she saw it. Movement on the eastern ridge, not the casual stagger of travelers, but the synchronized rhythm of soldiers. 20, maybe 22 men. She tracked them one by one, noting gear, spacing, weapon types. Every detail screamed military trained. And worse, they weren't improvising. They were positioning. The SEALs below didn't see them. They were boxed in by nature itself. Ice walls on 3 sides, open kill zone in the center. It wasn't terrain anymore. It was a trap. Lena's thumb grazed her radio switch. Overwatch to SEAL team. Hostile movement, ridgeline east, 500 meters. They're setting an L-shape ambush. "Move now," Static hissed. Then a calm voice replied, "Overwatch, confirm hostile intent." "Command says no engagement unless fired upon." Her jaw clenched. The words, "unless fired upon," were a polite way to say, "wait until it's too late." She exhaled slowly, aligning her crosshairs with a machine gunner preparing his tripod. The snow gusted, her heartbeat steady as the seconds fell away. Then the first crack split the air. A SEAL went down, and the valley erupted into thunder. Machine gun fire tore through the silence like ripping metal. Snow exploded around the SEALs as they scrambled for cover, returning fire toward flashes on the ridge. RPGs streaked through the air, trails of fire against white nothingness. Lena's breathing didn't change. Her body entered that familiar stillness, cold, mathematical, unbreakable. She was 800 meters from the SEALs. The hostiles, 1,500 from them, which made her shot almost 2 kilometers in crosswind, uphill through a blizzard. Impossible for most snipers, not for her. "Come on, breathe," she whispered, adjusting for wind drift. She found her natural pause, the quiet between heartbeats, and fired. The first target vanished backward. The machine gun went silent. Second target, an RPG gunner mid-load, fired. He dropped instantly. SEAL team, Overwatch engaging. "You're clear to move," she started, but static answered. The SEAL leader's voice broke through, strained, negative. One man down. Rivera's legs gone. We're stuck? She recalculated instantly. Terrain, distance, angle. The SEALs had minutes before being overrun. Air support was grounded. Reinforcements, 45 minutes out. Too long. Protocol said she should stay hidden. Command would tell her to maintain overwatch. But Lena Brooks had never been one to hide behind rules while others bled. She whispered, "Screw protocol." She dismantled her sniper hide, slung the MK-13 across her back, grabbed her M4, and began moving through the snow, 800 meters of open death. Wind screamed in her ears, but so did memory, her father's voice. "You don't run from storms, kid. You walk straight into them." And she did. The snow was knee-deep, the wind a living thing clawing at her face. Every step was pain, every second a choice between speed and survival. Her breath fogged inside the mask, freezing her lashes. She moved low, fast, using rock shadows for cover, an instinctive dance between visibility and death. At 300 meters, she could see the entire valley, a white battlefield carved by fire and fear. The SEALs were pinned behind fractured stones, returning bursts that barely slowed the enemy's advance. Rivera was down, leg twisted, blood melting the snow beneath him. His team refused to leave him. She smiled faintly beneath the mask. That's what real soldiers do. The hostiles had made one mistake. Their focus was forward. No one guarded their rear. They believed death came only from the front. Lena was about to teach them otherwise. She crept behind 2 rear sentries, half frozen by exhaustion. 2 suppressed rounds whispered through the storm. Both dropped silently, heads folding into snow. Then, crawling forward on elbows, she reached the first machine gun nest. 3 men working the weapon, unaware of her ghost-like approach. 2 bursts, 3 kills. Silence. The enemy began to sense something wrong. Fire patterns broke. Confusion rippled like a shockwave through their ranks. Lena moved laterally, reloading without sound. Her mind was still, her heart quiet. This was the part she was born for, the chaos, the cold, the clarity. Down below, the SEALs didn't yet know who was saving them, but they would remember the shape of her, a silhouette cutting through snow and fire, walking out of the storm like something the wind itself had summoned. Gunfire turned frantic as the ambushers realized they were being attacked from behind. Lena switched positions every 10 seconds, firing in calculated bursts to create the illusion of multiple shooters. Every sound she made became strategy. Every silence a weapon, unknown friendly, identify. The SEAL commander's voice came through the radio, strained but alive. She pressed her mic mid-reload. Overwatch, northwest flank, engaging from enemy rear. A pause. Disbelief, then relief. Overwatch, you're insane. Copy that, she whispered. Stay alive 10 more minutes. Her movements were brutal and beautiful all at once, sliding between snow ridges, firing from the hip, tossing a grenade that vanished in white mist before blooming into thunder. Enemy fighters broke formation, their discipline shattering into fear. A few turned to retreat, but she was faster. She was the storm they thought would protect them. Within minutes, 15 of them were down. The valley filled with echoes. Gunfire fading, replaced by the muffled sobs of wind and distant pain. But then a flash, a sniper's glint high on the ridge. She rolled behind a rock just as a bullet punched through her sleeve. Her arm stung. She smiled. "Finally found me," she whispered. She shifted, using her offhand to draw the MK-13 from her back. Through the scope, the world narrowed to one heartbeat. One flicker of light, breath, stillness, fire. The opposing sniper's scope shattered in a blink of red mist. Silence returned. Below, the SEAL commander's voice broke through static again. "Overwatch! Whoever you are, you just saved us." Lena closed her eyes, snow collecting on her lashes. "Not yet," she whispered. "We're not out of this." She looked toward the horizon, because the storm hadn't finished with them. The battlefield fell eerily quiet. Smoke drifted across the valley, curling around the wounded and the dead. The SEALs were regrouping, dragging Rivera behind cover. Snowflakes melted against his skin, blood steaming in the cold. Lena pressed her back against a rock, scanning through her scope. The enemy's numbers were dropping fast, but she knew the silence was a lie. It was the pause before something worse. "Overwatch," the SEAL commander radioed again, his voice calmer now. "We're patching Rivera. Can you hold position?" "Negative," Lena replied. "There's a second line of hostiles regrouping north. They'll push soon. I'll intercept." There was a pause, then a low voice. "Who the hell are you?" Lena didn't answer. She switched frequencies. Silence was safer. Her mind drifted for half a heartbeat, back to a classroom in Montana, her father showing her how to read wind through pine branches. "The wind never lies," he'd said. "It tells you where danger hides." She opened her eyes. The wind was moving northeast, and so were the enemy reinforcements. She rose, snow up to her knees, rifle heavy against her chest. Every muscle screamed to stop, but she kept moving, because sometimes the difference between courage and survival was a single step forward when everything in you wants to turn back. She whispered into the wind, "You hear that, Dad? I'm walking into another storm." Then she vanished into the white, heading straight toward the sound of gunfire. They came like ghosts, 15 silhouettes moving fast through the whiteout, closing in on the valley from the north, trained, disciplined, unaware of the woman who was already hunting them. Lena dropped flat, breathing slow, snow freezing against her cheek. Through her scope she counted rifles, scanned faces, read patterns. The lead soldier was older, eyes sharp, probably the commander. He signaled silently, and the group fanned out, preparing to flank the SEALs. Lena didn't have time for subtlety. She reached for her comms. "SEAL 1 north approach. 15 hostiles closing, 60 seconds out. Copy, Overwatch." "We're low on ammo," she smiled grimly. "Then let's make what you have count." She fired the first shot, a clean hit to the commander's throat. The rest scattered, ducking behind snow ridges. She shifted angles, taking 3 more before they even located her muzzle flash. Bullets shredded the air above her head. One grazed her shoulder. Pain bloomed warm under the cold, but she didn't flinch. She rolled, reloaded, fired again. Below, the SEALs joined in, short, desperate bursts. For the first time in 20 minutes, they weren't fighting to survive. They were fighting with purpose. "Overwatch, what's your position?" The SEAL leader called. "Close enough," she said between breaths. "Don't stop shooting." It was chaos, snow, fire, and adrenaline. But beneath it all, Lena felt something strange. Connection. These weren't faceless operators she protected from afar. These were people, breathing, bleeding, holding on. She exhaled slowly, wiped blood from her glove, and whispered, "We're going to live through this." She didn't realize she was talking to herself. Minutes stretched into eternity. The wind screamed louder than the bullets now, swallowing sound and sense. Lena's world shrank to rhythm, aim, fire, shift, reload. Her breath fogged in short, controlled bursts. She could taste iron and gunpowder. Her right arm throbbed where the bullet had torn through muscle. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. She saw one of the SEALs, the youngest, sprinting through open snow to drag Rivera to safety. A burst of gunfire caught him in the shoulder. He stumbled. Without thinking, Lena fired, dropping the enemy that hit him. Then another. Then another. "Overwatch, you just saved our medic." The SEAL leader shouted through static. Lena didn't answer. She couldn't. The world around her was slowing, adrenaline draining fast. She ducked behind cover, pulling open her med pouch. Blood soaked her sleeve. The cold was both friend and enemy, numbing pain but stealing strength. She tightened a makeshift tourniquet with trembling hands and forced a breath. Then she heard it. A low crunch, footsteps close. She turned. A fighter loomed 5 feet away, rifle raised. She dropped her empty mag, grabbed the knife from her chest rig, and lunged. The two collided in the snow, rolling, grunting, gasping. Her knife found his ribs first. Silence. She pushed the body off, chest heaving. The world blurred, snow and blood blending into something almost peaceful. Then the radio cracked again. Overwatch, came the SEAL leader's voice, quieter now. "Whoever you are, you're saving lives you'll never meet." Lena smiled faintly. "That's kind of the point," she whispered, reloading her rifle. "They don't need to know me, just that they made it home." By now, the valley was littered with the cost of survival. Bodies half buried in snow, the air thick with smoke and silence. The SEALs were stabilizing Rivera, wrapping his leg, voices breaking through the radio in short bursts of exhausted relief. But Lena's eyes stayed on the ridge. She knew there was always one more. There always was. She found him, a single hostile breaking away, backpack heavy, sprinting uphill. She zoomed in. The shape wasn't random. The man was carrying something. She focused her scope and froze, an encrypted comms box, the kind used to call reinforcements. Her breath hitched. "SEAL 1, hostile retreating north with comms package. He calls that in, this valley becomes a grave. Can you stop him?" Lena's gloves tightened around her rifle. She didn't answer. The range was insane. 2,000 meters, maybe more. Wind swirling, visibility collapsing. But she steadied her breathing anyway. She could almost hear her father's voice again. "The wind never lies. Trust it." She made the math in her head. Angle, drift, air density. Her hand trembled. She exhaled once, long and slow, letting everything inside her go with that breath. The fear, the noise, the years she'd spent chasing purpose through war. Finger tightened. Shot broke. Through her scope the runner dropped. The comms box tumbled from his grasp, skidding into white oblivion. For the first time all night, Lena lowered her rifle. Her hands shook uncontrollably. She wasn't sure if it was from cold or the weight of what she'd done. She looked toward the SEALs, faint figures in the valley below, and whispered, "You're safe now." But safety, she'd learned long ago, never comes free. Hours later, the storm began to fade. The sky cracked open into pale grey, dawn bleeding weakly across the snowfields. The sound of rotor blades cut through the air, distant but real. Extraction was finally coming. Lena crouched on a ridge, watching the SEALs carry Rivera toward the landing zone. Relief washed through her like warmth she hadn't felt in years. She keyed her mic one last time. SEAL 1 Overwatch. Reinforcements inbound from west. "You're clear." "Copy that," the commander replied. His voice softened. "You're not coming with us?" Lena smiled beneath her frost-bitten mask. "Negative. I was never here." "Overwatch? At least give me your name." She hesitated. The wind moved through the valley, gentle now, whispering through the wreckage. Then she said quietly, "Lena, just Lena." The channel fell silent. She watched as the SEALs loaded their wounded helicopter blades, lifting snow into a spiral of light and motion. Rivera, pale and fading, raised his hand weakly toward the ridge, not knowing if she could see him. She could, and she nodded once, the smallest of gestures. As the helicopter rose, the storm finally broke, sunlight spilling across the valley like forgiveness. Lena stood alone in the silence, rifle across her shoulder, wind tugging at her coat. Somewhere deep inside, a line she'd lived by for years came back to her. "You don't survive for medals. You survive so others can. And for the first time, she felt the truth of it not as duty, but as peace. She turned away from the horizon, her shadow stretching long across the snow. Behind her, the last echoes of battle were already fading. When the sound of the helicopter finally faded, the valley felt heavier. The snow had stopped, but the world still looked broken. Fragments of metal, footprints, and blood frozen mid-story. Lena stayed behind, kneeling by one of the fallen hostiles. He couldn't have been older than 19. She removed his glove. His fingers were blue, nails cracked. She closed his hand gently, whispering, "You were just following orders, huh?" Her breath fogged, drifted away. The wind didn't answer. She took one last scan through her scope. Just habit. No movement. No threats. Just silence. For most soldiers, silence meant safety. But for her, it always meant something else. The part of the story no one heard. She packed her rifle, tightened her sling, and started walking toward the high ground. Every step was heavier. She knew command would never credit her. The SEALs would be debriefed, medals awarded, reports written, and her name would vanish in classified ink. But maybe that was okay. Maybe it had to be. Halfway up the ridge, her radio buzzed, a faint, broken voice. "Overwatch. This is SEAL 1, Rivera's stable. You saved him." She froze, staring at the horizon. "Copy that," she replied softly. "Lena, thank you." Static swallowed his voice, leaving her with the wind again. She smiled faintly, pulling her hood tighter. "You're welcome," she whispered. "Now forget I ever existed." And with that, she disappeared into the snow. 3 weeks later, the world looked different, softer, warmer, almost peaceful. But peace was something Lena never fully believed in. She sat on her porch in Montana, the mountains glowing gold with sunrise, her arms still bandaged beneath her sweater. The town was small enough to forget things. No one asked where she'd been. The local diner owner just said, "Haven't seen you in a while," and poured her coffee without a word. Lena liked that. Quiet kindness. No questions every now and then. She'd catch herself scanning rooftops or reading the wind through the trees. Old habits that refused to die. The war had taken many things from her. Sleep, innocence, faith in simple days. But it had also given her something she couldn't name, a sense of purpose, carved out of loss. She thought of Rivera sometimes, wondered if he walked again, wondered if the SEALs ever told anyone about the ghost who saved them. She doubted it. That was the thing about people who live through impossible nights. They rarely talk about the light that guided them out. She looked up at the ridgeline, where snow still clung to the trees. The wind brushed against her cheek, soft and familiar, and for a second she could almost hear her father's voice again. "The wind never lies. Lena, it just carries the truth to those still listening," she smiled. "I'm still listening, Dad." That morning, a letter arrived. No return address. Just her name, written in sharp military script. She stared at it for a long time before tearing it open. Inside was a simple sheet of paper, one paragraph typed. "To the one who walked out of the storm, you saved more than a team that night. You reminded us why we fight. Rivera's alive, walking, says he owes his leg to a ghost. We all know ghosts don't ask for thanks, but we're giving it anyway." SEAL 1, Lena read it twice, then 3 times. Her eyes blurred, but not from cold this time. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it inside her father's old Ranger notebook, the one she'd carried through every deployment. That night, she sat by the fire, the orange glow soft against her scarred skin. The world outside was quiet, snow drifting in the moonlight, wind whispering through pine. For the first time in years, she let herself cry. Not from pain, not from guilt, but from something gentler. The kind of tears that come when you realize the storm is finally passing. She whispered, "You can rest now, Dad. I made it home." The flames flickered. Catching her reflection in the window, a woman weathered by war, still standing, still listening. Outside, the snow fell again. But it didn't feel like a threat anymore. It felt like forgiveness. Weeks turned into months. The world kept moving. The war machine spun on without her. She taught herself how to live like a civilian again, how to sleep without listening for footsteps, how to breathe without scanning horizons. But some nights, she'd wake before dawn, walk out to the ridge behind her cabin, and lie flat against the frozen ground, just like before. She'd close one eye, look through invisible sights, and whisper corrections to the wind for no reason other than memory. She wasn't trying to hold on to war. She was trying to hold on to who she became inside it, someone who still chose compassion over hatred, precision over panic, courage over chaos. Sometimes, in those quiet dawns, she'd imagine Rivera's laughter somewhere far away. Imagine the SEAL commander telling his team, "There was someone up there that day, someone we never saw." She hoped they never found out who she was, because anonymity wasn't loneliness for Lena anymore. It was peace, the kind that exists only when you've done your part and walked away quietly. The ghosts she carried didn't haunt her now. They walked beside her, not as reminders of death, but of the lives she'd helped preserve. And as the wind moved through the trees, she felt something deeper than victory. It was gratitude. Fragile, quiet, real. Spring came slowly to Montana. The snow receded, revealing patches of green, wildflowers pushing through frost. Lena sat by the edge of the woods, rifle across her knees. Not the military one, her father's old hunting rifle. Wood polished smooth by years of use. She looked through its scope one last time, not at a target, but at the horizon. The endless, forgiving horizon. "I think you were right," she said softly, speaking to the wind. "The wind never lies, but sometimes it forgets to tell you when you've done enough." A hawk circled above, its shadow cutting across her face. She smiled. For the first time, her body didn't ache from cold or fear. Her hands were steady. Her heart was quiet. The world didn't need her to fight anymore. It just needed her to remember. She placed the rifle down beside her, stood and turned toward the rising sun. The light caught the scar along her arm, not as a wound, but as proof she'd once walked through hell and found her way back. She whispered, "No one ever saw her coming." And that's the point. The wind rose softly, brushing against her hair, carrying her words away. Down in the valley, life went on. Children played, rivers thawed, and somewhere far across the world, men she'd saved were still breathing because of her, and for Lena Brooks. That was enough. If this story touched your heart, remember, heroes don't always wear medals. Sometimes they walk quietly out of storms, leaving behind only the lives they've saved. Like, subscribe, and press the bell icon for more real stories that remind us courage is silent, but it echoes forever.